By the 1920s, the art world in Paris had completely splintered. The strict, polished rules of the academies were gone, replaced by canvases that looked like exploding geometry. Painters like Pablo Picasso and Georges Braque were tearing reality into pieces to invent cubism. Henri Matisse was redefining how artists used color, yet he kept a specific older painting in his studio collection, relying on it as what he called a sustaining influence. If you asked Picasso, Braque, or Matisse who paved the way for their revolution, they all pointed to the same man, Paul Cézanne. But Cézanne wasn't in Paris. He had been dead for 14 years. The most forward-looking movement in European culture was entirely anchored to a ghost. If we jump back to when Cézanne was working, his reality was bleak. He submitted his work to the prestigious Paris Salon year after year, and he was rejected almost every single time. Even the rebellious painters of his day, the Impressionists he exhibited with, thought his work was a mess. They looked at his canvases and saw crude, unresolved surfaces and wildly uncertain drawing. Humiliated and isolated, he withdrew to Aix-en-Provence in the south of France to work entirely alone. When he died in 1906, he was so deeply obscure that the local newspaper managed to spell his name wrong in his obituary. This raises a question. How did this isolated painter find the specific technical bridge between shifting sensation and solid structure that everyone else was searching for? The Impressionists had achieved something remarkable. They figured out how to trap light, atmosphere, and the fleeting sensation of a single moment on canvas. But this victory created a massive structural flaw. In their pursuit of light, their paintings dissolved into pure air and surface. The underlying solidity of the world evaporated. Cézanne looked at this and decided he needed to make of Impressionism something solid and durable, like the art of the museums. He wanted the shimmering sensation of the present, locked into a permanent structural skeleton. Cézanne was engineering a permanent architecture to house the fleeting, atmospheric reality the Impressionists had discovered. Look at traditional perspective. Since the Renaissance, painters treated the canvas as a mathematical window, forcing a single, frozen viewpoint. But we move. Your eyes dart, your head tilts, and your relationship to objects constantly shifts. To capture this chaotic movement, Cézanne developed a technique called passage. He deliberately blurred the edges between distinct forms, allowing a rock to bleed into a shadow or a tree to merge with the sky. Instead of handing you a clear, hard outline, he forces your own eye to actively construct the shapes as you look at them. Then he introduced multiple viewpoints onto a single canvas. He would paint a table straight on, but map the bowl of apples sitting on top of it as if you were hovering slightly above. This mapping process was agonizingly slow. He required subjects to sit motionless for over 100 sessions just to plot out these shifting angles. 19th century critics looked at these shifting planes and assumed he was simply making crude, amateur mistakes. In reality, he was precisely mapping human time and physical movement onto a flat surface. To understand how this works in practice, we have to look at the limestone peak towering over his hometown, Mont Saint-Victoire. This specific geography became his absolute obsession. Over the course of 25 years, he painted this exact same landscape roughly 80 times. If you track these canvases chronologically, you can watch his conventional landscapes slowly break apart, devolving into aggressive, interlocking facets of color. After 25 years, he proved that a painting records the mechanics of human sight, turning the act of looking into the subject itself. The art world finally saw what he was building in 1895. An art dealer named Ambroise Villard tracked down the forgotten 56-year-old painter and mounted his first major retrospective in Paris. The reaction was staggering. Monet bought 3 of his paintings. Camille Pissarro wept in the gallery. A pilgrimage of young painters began traveling to his studio in Aix. He never stopped working the problem. In October 1906, he was caught in a massive rainstorm while out mapping the mountain. He collapsed, tried to keep painting the next day, and died within the week. By tilting a bowl of apples and fracturing the face of a mountain, he taught the artists of the 20th century that a painting is a constructed object, a problem to be solved from the ground up, freshly every single time you pick up a brush.